Okay, great. So let's kick this off. Hi everyone. My name is Raad, and I am the founder and CEO of Lawtrades. We're a marketplace for hiring flexible legal talent. First off, I want to give a big thank you to our panelists, Liz, Meredith, Kathy, and Brinda, for taking time out of their busy schedules to make today's very special event happen. For those who haven't heard about us, I started Lawtrades out of my law school dorm a few years ago with a mission to create an open legal system. I wondered if software built a law firm today, what would it look like? I pictured an internet platform that fostered a decentralized work life, meaning that anyone, anywhere, of any background can simply work with and get paid by anyone that they want to. It turns out that when you get rid of institutional hierarchy and let your skills speak for itself, really good things start to happen. For instance, 52% of our talent network are women and 37% identify as a racial minority. That's nearly double compared to all US law firms. Not to mention, they've earned millions working flexibly on the Lawtrades platform. So for in-house leaders that are looking to diversify your legal team, feel free to check us out. And for all the non-traditional lawyers out there, especially women and people of color that want to partner with some of the most innovative tech companies on the planet, feel free to create a profile. With that said, I'll pass the mic off to Liz to kick off today's discussion.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Raad, and thank you, Lawtrades, for hosting this great event. March was Women's History Month, and we saw a lot of great energy and celebration around women in the workforce. We brought this panel together today at the end of Women's History Month because we would love to examine how to keep that force going, especially in light of the news we've seen about record numbers of women leaving the workforce due to the pandemic. This panel is here today to talk about perceptions of gender and how gender has influenced their careers, their personal brands, their leadership styles, and what we see as the future of women in law. And most importantly, what we can do to make diversity and inclusion a reality and make every month Women's History Month. So before I introduce our speakers, I want to invite the audience to participate in our discussion. We really are here for you, whether you're a more junior attorney wondering about your career path, a more senior one with advice or experience to share with us, or an advocate who wants to know how you can help. We want to hear from you. We're on Clubhouse and Zoom, so we're gonna monitor the Zoom chat as we go along here. We will leave some time at the end for you to ask questions on Clubhouse. We're dealing with muting and unmuting a couple of systems here, so bear with us as we switch back and forth. But I'm pleased to be joined today by a fantastic panel of exceptional women leaders. Including Brinda Dutta from 500 Startups, Meredith Smith from Stash, and Kathy Zhu from Doordash, and of course, Raad, who's already introduced himself from Lawtrades, who is our host today. Without further ado, I'm going to give each one of our panelists a moment to introduce herself, and then we will kick it off. Brinda, let's go ahead and start with you.
Thanks, Liz. It's an honor to be part of this panel today. I am Brinda Dutta. I'm the Associate General Counsel with 500 Startups. I've been a funds counsel my whole legal career. I used to work with a law firm first out of Hong Kong and then out of California, and then I live in New York now, and I work remotely for a venture capital fund, which has offices all around the world. So I've had a truly international experience with my practice, and I've also worked with some wonderful women along the way, and I'm thrilled to be part of this.
Thank you. Kathy, let's turn it over to you.
Thanks, Liz. So great to be here with all of you wonderful ladies, and thanks for leading us, Liz.
Yeah.
Oh, just still trying to figure out these two systems. Okay, great. Hopefully you can hear me now. So I started my career at Wilson Sonsini as a corporate associate. And then after a few years, went in-house as commercial counsel, kind of really learned my paces at Medallia, which is a software company in the Silicon Valley. And after 4 years, I went over to Doordash, where I am now, AGC of commercial as well as legal operations. And really just have had the privilege of working with some tremendous women leaders during my time. And yeah, excited to be just sharing a little bit more about my experience along the way with all of you today.
Great, Kathy, thank you. Meredith, last but certainly not least.
All right, hey everybody, I'm Meredith Smith. I am the General Counsel at Stash. We are a personal finance app that really helps people learn to invest and save and build wealth. And I'll talk a little bit about Stash later, just to talk about kind of how inclusivity and diversity is just a huge part of who we are and our mission, and kind of how important that is when you're looking for a place to work. I started my career at Sullivan and Cromwell in their financial institutions group, and was there quite a while before making the jump over to Stash. And excited to share my story. I'm probably, with some of the other members of the panel, a mom of 3, and being a mom, especially now working from home, is just a huge part of just who I am, but also how I work and how I kind of incorporated that into my work and kind of how I approach legal problems. So excited to talk a lot about that. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Meredith. It occurs to me, everyone, that I sort of forgot to introduce myself. I am Liz Benegas. I am the General Counsel of Totango, which is based in the Bay Area. I've been with them all of a month now. Prior to that, I was with Net Documents, which is a legal tech platform based in Salt Lake City. That is where I live, but I started my practice as a corporate governance attorney out of Delaware. So I made my move in-house about 5 years ago with a company called Dealer Socket, which is based out of Southern California. So it's my third in-house gig. I have also done the law firm thing. And, I think that this panel has a really interesting variety of backgrounds. So each of you have a lot to bring to this, and I'm excited to hear from all of you. Okay, so I mentioned in our intro that March is Women's History Month, and we have seen a lot about women in the workplace, really all throughout 2020, but especially here in March, as yesterday was Equal Pay Day, and that got a bit of press. So I want to start by setting the scene for our panelists and participants about the current state of women in law. And this isn't particular to women in-house. But recent statistics show that women are more than 50% of law school students for the 3rd or 4th year in a row. Law 360 says that women make up 40% of all attorneys and 25% partners in law firms, over 30% of equity partners at some large firms. Barker Gilmore reports the total number of women GCs in the Fortune 500 is 34% as of 2020. Yet, statistics from the Center for Work-Life Law at UC Hastings and the ABA Commission on Women in the Profession and the Minority Corporate Counsel Association show that only 40% of female lawyers of color and 44% of white female lawyers feel free to express anger in their jobs. Over half say that they are routinely interrupted in meetings and when they're speaking. And 46% of women lawyers of color, 48% of white women lawyers say they feel they're penalized in their professional lives for being assertive. So it's hard to square those, it seems on the face of it that women are doing pretty well, and we are filling a good portion of the pipeline. We are making progress in law firms and in in-house roles, but we still seem to feel that we aren't free to bring our authentic selves to work. 152 years after the first woman lawyer in America. So we're gonna start there. Panel, I would love your thoughts on that. Has being a woman affected your professional style? Brinda, I'm going to kick it off with you.
Thanks, Liz. Whilst 500 has a wonderful culture and generally, not just women, no one is interrupted or talked down to in my past professional life, whether it's been where I'm working or whether it's been with clients as a woman, I have certainly had experiences where I feel like if I'm trying to be assertive or if I'm disagreeing with someone, it's seen as loud or shrill. Whilst, you know, if a male colleague is doing that, it's accepted a little better. And whilst obviously that's not fair, it's also, for me, it's been a bit of a fact of life. And what I learned from it as a junior lawyer was to be assertive in a firm but quiet way, and not, you know, let my emotions get the better of me. And I also learned to step in only when I knew I could make a really good point. Maybe sometimes that meant others, you know, beat me to the punchline, but that's fine. I've tried to build professional respect in those situations by just taking it a notch down if I had to, and managing the situation the best that I could.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. I share some of those experiences, and it is not always easy to keep quiet and listen when you feel you have something to say. But I agree with you that you can earn a lot of respect that way. So, Meredith, how about you?
Yeah, I think I would be surprised if there's any female lawyer who has actually practiced of any number of years that hasn't felt some of these effects of, you know, being interrupted or, you know, talked down to, being the only female in the room. You know, I kind of had the law firm upbringing and was in financial services. So it wasn't uncommon to kind of end up in a room being the only female there. But I think, you know, that's representative of something, but it also builds in you a confidence and a desire and a need to really own the substance that well. Like, to me, knowing the law and applying the facts well could kind of make up for almost everything, because if you spoke and people knew that you knew what you were talking about, you gain that respect very quickly, just based on merit. So I think merit's a big piece of it. Just really being a good lawyer is just a huge piece of being successful. And, you know, I think in terms of bringing our authentic self to work, I think a really big piece of that is doing your diligence on your employer. You know, I think of, you know, our company values. Being authentic is actually one of our 5 corporate values. Diversity is a big thing, and inclusivity is a big thing. And not that makes a place perfect. Nowhere is ever going to be perfect, but it sets a really good base and a lot of really good intentions for people to really bring themselves to work, no matter if they're in, you know, our law department like me, or marketing or product or engineering. It's really, really important to do your diligence on your employer and make sure that's a big piece of what they support.
Right. I love that. And I'm gonna go off our outline just a little bit right here on question number 1, because we have a comment in our chat from Emily. And she says, not necessarily a question, but something she wants to share. Years ago, after she stood up to a patronizing opposing counsel in a deposition, a partner in her law firm called everyone into a conference room and read from the deposition transcript and praised her for standing up for herself. And she says she appreciated his support for her assertiveness. And I think that's amazing. One, that you stood up for yourself, Emily, because I have had similar experiences. And after the fact, I fervently wish I had said something, but sometimes in the moment, with the shock and awe of being in that position, it doesn't always roll off the tongue to fire something back. So number 1, good on you. I think that that's a really important way for women to get advocates, right? I mean, that's in a way, that's sort of asking for help. And your partner, your managing partner obviously heard that and embraced it. So good on him too. I've had a similar experience with colleagues in-house and they have become advocates in that way. So I really love that. So Emily has another question here that I think feeds nicely into one of the talking points that we've discussed. And that is, what other steps can managers take to support women lawyers in being assertive? Meredith, that kind of builds on something you said during our prep and a little bit on what you spoke about just a moment ago, how company culture plays into diversity, inclusion, encouraging women and all people to stand up for themselves. So we'll start with you. I know that you have had a lot of experience with that at Stash.
Yeah, I think it with being assertive, again, like goes back to knowing the law at the end of the day and being confident in that. But for me, I think you kind of pose this question as like, what do I do as a manager for folks on my team, and whether no matter kind of the gender of who or which gender they identify with, I always like, if someone has a good idea, I don't know about you all, like if you work off Slack or whatnot, but I'm in-house, so I work off Slack now. And a lot of times I'll be in a meeting and someone on my team kind of slacks me offline with this fantastic point. And I'm like, why are you funneling this through me? Like, speak up. You know, this is a great point. You raise it. Like, so as a manager, I very much try to let people hear from where the thought is coming from, because it really helps build that, like, oh, I can speak up in this group. People want to hear what I have to say. So I really try, if they're to not be a mouthpiece for people on my team as a manager, and really let them get in there and build influence and learn how to speak, you know, publicly, whether it's a small group or a big group. So a lot of what I do is really helping them kind of speak up for themselves.
Love that. Kathy, you're nodding over there. You work on a large legal team too. So what have your experiences been in this regard?
Yeah, definitely. So actually, I think back to my early days at Medallia, when I was really just new and learning and very much felt junior at that time. But my manager, who headed up the commercial function as well as a GC, consistently reiterated the fact that we were future leaders in legal, and treated us like that, and talked about, you know, one day when you lead your teams. And it was so emphasized that it just became ingrained, like, this is actually what I'm working towards. It's influenced and impacted me so much that it's absolutely how now I lead my team. I talk about, you know, and use these words all the time, and I can see how much that raises their confidence in themselves, and, you know, with that goal to kind of work towards. So it's more of kind of like an upliftment generally, rather than specifically in discrete situations.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a proud legal team of one, but in past positions where I have had people either reporting to me or who I report into, my attitude has very much been, we do everything together. We're a team. We're super transparent. You know, everything that I deal with, you will also deal with, because everything is a learning opportunity, right? So to flip that same topic on its head just a little bit, because we have had so many experiences in law firms and in-house positions, I'm curious to know from you panelists, what do you look for in a company, in a boss, a mentor, a team? How does gender play into that, if at all, in your selecting, you know, a new company, team, boss, mentor who's going to lift you up and give you those kinds of opportunities?
I can go. So at 500, our CEO and our COO are both female, and they're young mothers. So when I was first considering joining 500, the fact that I identified so well with them, and that we connected on all the challenges of, you know, having such a demanding job whilst also having demands at home, was something that really resonated with me. And you won't always get that, but I think at the very baseline, you should look for the values that you identify with. And, you know, that first impression that I got when I got to know them has never changed. Like even through the pandemic, as an institution, they've been constantly checking in on the welfare of people and encouraging us as department heads to check in on the welfare of our teams and how everyone's managing with this challenging situation. So I just think, you know, when you're speaking with a future boss, then just getting a sense of the priorities that they have alongside, you know, delivery of good work is something that makes you understand the culture of the place, and that continues throughout because they are the ones building it up top down.
Yeah, I'll add on to Brinda's, because one of those points resonates with me also, which is I was, I think maybe employee 80 at Stash. Now we're up to maybe 300. So that when I got there, the executive team, which I wasn't a part of then, but it was pretty small. There was a woman, our chief marketing officer, who interviewed me, and she was by far one of the most important people. Like at a startup, your head of marketing, when acquisition is so important to like the livelihood and sustainability of the company, it was a woman. She was a total, you know, I won't say because I don't know if I can, you know, use whatever word you want to insert there, but she was amazing. And she had 4 kids, like 4 boys. I have 3 boys. So I like totally identified with this. And I'm like, she's an executive. She was actually working a part-time schedule at the time. Like they were totally accommodating, even though our 2 founders were men, of when she came in, when she worked from home. It was just, she basically was like, or they said, you know what you're doing, do whatever you need to. So that was a big thing for me. And the other thing that I'll say is ask about the company's mission, their vision, what values they have, because that was new to me out of a law firm. I had never heard of companies like having a vision and a mission, and what's your strategy this year, and what are your key performance indicators. That all trickles down and has huge impacts on kind of how the business is run and kind of what your North Star is. And it really drives a lot around the people they hire and what the culture is. So definitely ask about those kind of softer things about the company when you're looking.
If I could just, add one thing as well there, Liz, it would be around finding a manager who really sees your potential. And that absolutely was the case when I left Medallia. Previously never managed before, never led a team. And my now manager at Doordash, who is VP and basically runs the legal function day to day, she took a chance on me. And I think that just spoke volumes, right? And she continued to be my advocate through the years, grew me, to a directorship position and recently AGC. It's because she's constantly just been in my corner, speaking for me, highlighting the things that I've done. And so I think for our listeners, if you can find that in a manager, that's amazing. Someone who really can see you in the future, what you can become, and helps you get there.
So true. I love that, Kathy. I've had people in my career take a chance on me too. And so I am very much in a place where I love to be able to pay that forward. And we're going to get there in a few minutes, but we have some super great questions right now. I'm terribly excited. So I'm going to move over to the Q&A and throw some at you here. I'm going to start with the question we have from Charles because it kind of builds on what we were just talking about. And he says, diversity in the legal profession is still very much a work in progress. How can gender equality and diversity in the in-house legal department best advance together? Does management generally view the 2 issues with equal importance or not? Anybody have a view on that? I think, Meredith, you have touched on this a little bit when you've talked about the trickle-down effect that management can have, and it isn't necessarily limited to the legal department, Charles, but I do think that legal is a little bit in a unique place in a lot of companies because we touch so many other areas. So I think we are kind of uniquely positioned to push that initiative with the support of management. So I really do think that having management buy-in and having it be a KPI and a company value is critical to getting diversity and inclusion, not only in the GC's office, but throughout the executive team and throughout the org. But would be super interested to hear from any of you panelists about your experiences. I mean, I'll say at Totango, over half of our executive team is women, and it's sort of just, it's a fact of life. You know, even when I was talking to our CEO and CAO, the discussion was about their families and what they do on weekends and, you know, life more than, you know, the 9-to-5 stuff. So that told me that that's going to be the company culture here.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, we've done kind of a whole host of things to improve diversity. I think we were pretty good, but we weren't good enough. And we kind of made this whole list of things that we were going to do and keep improving upon. And I think one, the management buy-in is huge. I mean, nothing gets done if you just don't have that backing. But one of the greatest things we did in hiring, because we're high growth, we are hiring and hiring and hiring, is trying to hire from different sources that aren't our typical sources. Because like, I think if you just focus on kind of the LinkedIn and just putting jobs on your web page, you're not reaching everyone. So we've tried really hard to do, you know, it's hard with COVID, but to go to more panels. There's all sorts of diverse network groups in tech and all sorts of things. So we've really tried to hit up different recruiting sources to really spread, to kind of open up the funnel for every single one of our job postings and get a diverse slate of candidates for every single role. And it really starts to permeate pretty quickly. So you get everybody, you know, we have kind of 10 levels of folks at Stash, and you kind of, you know, you do that in every role, and all of a sudden you're really, really increasing your diversity by leaps and bounds pretty quickly just by looking at different places for people, whether it's legal roles or tech roles or whatnot.
Yeah, and interestingly, building on that, we have another question in the Q&A that I'm building up to, Hillary. But I think, and it could just be because I'm a woman lawyer and I'm in-house, and those tend to be the groups that I follow. But it's a really active community with organizations like Lawtrades, you know, and others. And Hillary, your question here is, in what ways did you seek female attorney mentorship to get where you are in your careers today? And do you feel a responsibility to act as a mentor to others who are building their careers? As I mentioned, many of us are a legal team of one, and it's always helpful to learn how to tap into networks and mentors. While I'm already talking, I will just say, Hillary, 110%. I feel I have a responsibility to act as a mentor to others who are building their careers, men or women. I mean, we all have champions throughout our careers, and we all have those people who go out on a limb for us from time to time, as Kathy mentioned. And I think paying it forward is one of the reasons we're here today, because we're all super passionate about helping others find the kind of success and happiness and freedom in their careers that we have been lucky enough to find. Panel, I know you guys have thoughts on this, so I'm going to turn it over to you first, Kathy.
Yeah, so this has absolutely just been the most fulfilling part of my job, 100%. It's building and growing a team of just amazing individuals. So on the commercial side of the house at Doordash, we are actually a team of 6 women. And it wasn't like I even intentionally went out and was just like, I'm only going to hire women. Those are just the best candidates that showed up. But we've really just been so intentional about creating the experience that we want for ourselves. And it can be super stressful and demanding, right? With commercial work and end of quarter rush and people constantly escalating and pinging. And I think because we're just so safe and comfortable with each other in the space that we've built, we're actually talking about how do we shape that experience? How do we make this sane and better and balanced and happy for ourselves, right? I think that is something really kind of amazing and unique that women do bring to the table, is we can be so comfortable being vulnerable, sharing what the experience looks like, and not just focusing purely on like the work that we're churning out day after day. That's how we make it sustainable, right, for the long term. And I think about like, you know, now in the future, as my team goes on to create their own teams, and, you know, no one stays at the same company forever. Hopefully that brand and that value about shaping our experience and like making this into a better thing, right, for everyone will continue to kind of flourish and grow. And it's very much exactly, Liz, like, and, you know, that question is about moving things forward and trickling forward.
For sure, for sure. We have another great question in our chat here. If anyone has kids, and I venture a guess that all of us do have kids actually on this panel, have you experienced any setback in your career, however you define setback? And if so, how did you deal with it? How did you overcome that? Brinda, you're smiling, and so I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yes, this is definitely something close to my heart. I was with a law firm, Goodwin, for many, many years. After I had my second kid and we happened to be moving cities, it was just too much for me to continue with the law firm cadence of work and deadline pressures and everything else. And I voluntarily didn't come from the firm, but I voluntarily decided that I wanted to take a step back. And at that time, I took a break, and I didn't know what my path to get back into profession would be, what alternatives would be open to me. And it turns out that, you know, we think of the legal profession as a linear path through law firms and, you know, a specific way of just getting into a full-time job at an in-house role. But there are actually a lot of alternatives for those who want to work part-time, those who want to work flex time. I worked flex time at Goodwin for a while as well. And, you know, those who want to just take a break. So in my case, I didn't get too long a break because I started working through Lawtrades with 500 actually as an off counsel. And I worked part-time, which gave me exactly the right amount of leeway to be able to take care of all my demands at home before I got recruited fully into 500. And that was a great on-ramp for me. Coincidentally, there is an on-ramp fellowship program that the law firms do, and I hope one day larger in-house legal departments also take it, where they help people who've taken a break from profession come back into profession. So that's another great initiative. And then finally, even within 500, we have a lot of flexibility given to our team, which is actually a team of 10 women. Same thing, they were just the best candidates. But we give the team a lot of flexibility on the hours they want to work, if they ever need to take some time off, you know, however long it is for personal reasons, just to try and pay it forward, because we got these unique opportunities at the top of the team and we want to be able to give it to everyone else.
Love that. Thank you.
I'll add there. Sorry if you hear banging. I'm like having a window fixed, so I'm gonna talk close to the phone. But you know, I'm a mom as well. I have now at this point taken 3 maternity leaves, 2 while I was at a law firm and 1 after I went in-house at Stash. And you know, it's hard. And I think for a lot of us who work really hard and, you know, I like my job, I like what I do, and I'm totally wrapped up in it. It's really hard to step away for that period of time. And it was easier at the law firm because you had so many resources to really cover for you, but you did lose time and you lost that, you know, your counterparts were still working and getting more experience, doing more deals. I was on the corporate side, but litigation, I'm sure it's, you know, similar. You kind of get staffed on more cases and whatnot. So it was hard. Like I felt like I missed, you know, between 2 maternity leaves at a firm, it's a year plus on ramp and off ramp. Like I felt like I lost a lot of time compared to people in my class. So that was tough. They made it great for me. They offered us great leave and did everything they could. But at the end of the day, I was missing time and missing experiences. But in-house, it was very different. Like it was, you know, I had some people on my team by the time I took leave. And I think I really had to figure out how to cover for myself. Like I had to propose getting I actually used Lawtrades also. I'm not trying to plug their service, but I used Lawtrades to kind of bring someone in and plug a hole. I also created this massive spreadsheet of all the work streams I was on and who to contact, to whether people could go straight to outside counsel and CC me. And like, I stayed plugged into a couple topics that were super sensitive because I didn't want other people handling them. But like between all of that, I really owned how much I could step away on that maternity leave. So really had to like own responsibility for it and get the coverage and, you know, really, really, really plan. And it ends up working out really well, I think.
I just have so much respect for you ladies who you're taking on so much at work and then also at home. I just want to share this one experience because it was very meaningful for me actually. When a senior colleague of mine, who's a woman, has 2 kids, and came to me basically in one moment and was sharing how it just felt like a lot sometimes. And it's not a balance because at any moment in time, things are out of balance, right? Either in one area or both areas. And I told her, you know how amazing of a role model you are to your kids, that they're able to see you doing all this and that you are a leader and you're a woman and that this is possible. And I shared with her that my personal experience growing up as an immigrant after having moved overseas with my family and really growing up with a lack of visible female role models. There weren't any women in the immigrant communities around me who were actually having a career, exhibiting personal power, right? And that to me was just how the world was meant to be. And I had to fight to really change that view, that perception. So I was telling my colleague, you are changing the way that your children are viewing the world simply by being and doing what you're doing. So it's just really powerful. And I just wanted to give you a shout out, all of you ladies out there who are doing all of this.
Likewise, you, Kathy. I mean, you are doing more than your share. I'm going to turn it over to you, Raad, for a minute and putting you on the spot here. But you mentioned in your intro that Lawtrades, I think you said over half of the folks on your site are women, and you have also a huge number of ethnic minorities. Tell us a little bit about what they see in the Lawtrades platform, and why they're at Lawtrades when they seem to be absent from more traditional law jobs. I think I know, because I had a maternity leave too, back before Lawtrades existed. Sadly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And projects and engagements like maternity leaves is like probably like the #1 or #2 most requested service on our platform. I think there's a couple of reasons, right? I think #1, just technology and the internet. I think the internet is the greatest wealth creation tool in all of human history. Anyone can access any amount of information, and now we're building out tools that actually allow people to earn a living online in their own terms, in their own flexible way. So I think for us, it's not like we like launched the platform and we were like, you know, we're going to do this to recruit, 50% women and 40% minorities. That was just like a natural byproduct of creating an open system, right? Where we looked at people, but we looked at their skills, we looked at their profiles, we looked at their feedback, and we also offered flexible work. And that to me, I think is the future of work, right? Where you can just wake up, look at your future device, pick and choose some stuff you want to work on, You know, maybe do it in VR in the future, get paid in crypto or through Stash or something. And then set yourself on vacation mode and go off on an island for 2 weeks to rest and recover, and then come back and do some more work, right? I think that as humans, that's what we are meant to be. We're creative people, and not everyone sort of fits the typical 9-to-5 desk job. So I think because of that, the platform gave rise to a lot of these non-traditional folks, of people that maybe worked at big law and got burned out, and you know, decided to start a family. And to them, a 40, 50, 60-hour work week isn't super appealing, but maybe a 20-hour work week would be cool. And maybe doing it in West Coast time, and maybe, you know, in an industry that they're genuinely interested in, right? So like the platform, at least that we're building, kind of takes all of that into consideration, really personalizes work that's for you, instead of just like, okay, here's a job post on LinkedIn, and you apply, and you're going to be working here for the next like 5 to 10 years. And it has to be, I mean, before it was like, it has to be in the office, and you kind of work your way up. And the future that we sort of see is like, you know, like pick and choose your own path, right? Choose your own clients, choose like work that's like that you're really connected with or passionate about. And we just take a step back, and we sort of let the platform orchestrate all of that. But I think it's really cool that, you know, we're like kind of 6 years into it now, and we're just sort of seeing this organic growth of non-traditional lawyers joining. And then on the plus side with you guys are more on the customer facing side of it. You get to access a really diverse network, right? Of like, and as you know, community is at the heart of everything we do. It's one of the reasons why we're sort of doing these events. And I think it's a powerful driving force, along with a good product and a good enough mission. So it's surprising, but not surprising. But you know, I'm obviously super proud of some of the progress we've made there.
Yeah, it's awesome. I for one, am thrilled to see the progress you are making, because I agree with you that that kind of is the future of work, and in many ways the future of law. And I would also love a 2-week island vacation. So you're making a good case in that respect too, Raad. I think we all probably would. Okay, so we have some more Q&A that I'm gonna flip to, because I want to make sure that we have time to get through this. Hillary asks, can you provide an example of a memorable professional failure and how you handled it, what you learned from it? Yes. I don't think I've had a professional failure yet today, Hillary, but I will confess to having many in my career. I think probably the most significant failure I have had is really the failure to advocate for myself, and or to settle for less than I'm worth. And I think part of that, Kathy, interestingly goes back to the comment you just made about perhaps the generation in which I was raised, and there were not a lot of professional women around. And, you know, it was sort of, wow, it's great that you're a woman lawyer. You know, so I had this sense that like, maybe I'm lucky to be in the position I'm in, and I should just be grateful that I have the job and the position and the opportunity. And maybe that's enough, and I don't need to ask for more. I have learned that lesson a couple times now. So hopefully this, you know, I think I have finally ingrained it. But for me, Hillary, as a woman lawyer, I think that's probably the most profound example I can think of as that is a failure, you know, a failure of my own, really, a failure of my own making. So curious to hear from you, Meredith, Brinda, Kathy, whether you have any professional failures, what you learned, and then how you handled them.
There is actually something that's really top of mind for me right now, not just as a woman lawyer, but as a woman lawyer who's also a member of the AAPI community. In the wake of what's recently been happening and all the violence that's been perpetuated against our community, I really personally feel like I should have been speaking up more to actually give voice to that. Our legal team's pretty large. It's a team of 30. And I think that as a leader on that team, I need to actually give voice, right? And I've been reaching out directly one-on-one, but it makes me realize just the fact that if the leaders are silent, it really feels like this whole thing is just being ignored. And that matters. So, I think the learning for me here is how impactful that is, even if we just say a sentence or two, but shed light on the fact that, this is not okay. And, maybe our team members need a moment to decompress because we're all working remotely. It's easy just to keep our heads buried and in work and ignore everything else that's happening. But maybe we need to step aside, for a day or just have no meetings to decompress. And that's okay, So that's something that's just really been top of mind for me recently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very important, even if it's just a sentence or two, like you said, Kathy, to let people know that we recognize it and we are watching it and it is not okay. So yeah, I think that's a very, very important point.
Yeah, I actually, Liz, when you asked the question, professional failures, I automatically started thinking of like all the legal mistakes that I have made, like,
yes.
And I'm like, oh, well, there was that one, and oh, that was a doozy. Oh, that one was really bad. But like, I actually wouldn't list any of those. As bad as some of them were, I wouldn't actually list like those as my failure. It's more the soft stuff. It's more like supporting diversity initiatives, like speaking up for someone on your team when someone says, they're a blocker or they said no. It's like, no, they didn't say no. They told you if you wanted to do it this way, this is how you'd have to do it. And this is just miscommunication. So like, I really think it's more about those, how do you manage people? How do you lead people? How do you have their backs? Empathizing with people. It's really that stuff, which isn't even the legal stuff. It's like, it's the stuff that applies no matter what profession you're in or what you're doing, really.
Absolutely. And Jackie asked a really good question that fits in nicely here. In this new age of remote working and having no access to senior leadership, how do you get someone at your company or future company to take a chance on you, to trust you, and to bring you into their in-house roles? That's an outstanding question, Jackie, having just gone through an interview process and hiring myself. It's not easy, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Brinda, because you went through this with Lawtrades and 500, and Kathy and Meredith for your thoughts on how do you get buy-in, how do you get that trust, how do you get the opportunity to prove that you are, the legal leader a company's looking for.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I had a very fortunate experience where, not only did I get the chance to show what I was capable of through my work, through Lawtrades, but, the people at the company were receptive to that and were willing to recognize the value in that. And, that doesn't always happen. But I think at least at 500, what we've been doing is, just like Meredith mentioned, we've been trying to recruit from non-traditional sources. I also think that sometimes in legal recruiting, you kind of get stuck on big law as an essential prerequisite. But we've seen over the years that, we found wonderful talent who don't necessarily have your traditional big law experience or only have it to a limited extent. And that has given us access to wonderful people that we wouldn't have had on our teams before. We also hire across the world. And in doing so, sometimes it's difficult. It's not like apples to apples measurement, right, of merit, but, we'll just do things like we'll have an actual skills test that we'll give to people. And we found that to be useful, actually. It's not very common, but it actually lets people show us what they know, and it makes us much more comfortable as a team to take on someone. So there have been like a lot of different ways in which we've tried to get talent from across the board. And we continue to use like non-traditional and part-time resources like Lawtrades, and often will tap into that resource to hire someone.
Yeah, just to, I mean, like, I did not interview during COVID. I've been at Stash for about 3.5 years now, but I mean, we've probably made 100+ hires since COVID started. So just so, you know, folks on the call don't think that COVID and being virtual, Stash, actually, we decided to go remote, optional for every position for, you know, permanently. So we are remote. You know, I think humans' default is the in-person, so you can kind of read people's body language and kind of really get a sense for people that way. But we've hired plenty of people remotely where you kind of forget your only interactions have been through a Zoom or a Google Meet. And there is plenty of ways that you can earn someone's trust. Like it's at the end of the day, it's really through your words, right? And the advice you give, and you can earn people's trust. You can express empathy through virtually, being authentic. Like you can do that all virtually. It seems weird, but like at this point, we've hired so many people since last March that we really do forget. Oh my gosh, so and so, I cannot believe that we've never actually met in person, and you're having like these great interactions. And I think it takes a lot of, you know, it takes work and it takes time, both working through the substantive issues, but also doing social events. Like your company should be hosting social events so you can connect on a personal level as well as a professional one.
Agreed. I mean, we've all had that. I think we've all gotten used to or have a new comfort level with Zoom and GoToMeeting and all of these great things, and Clubhouse now. But I think it also goes back to what you said, Meredith, and what you said earlier, that in a lot of ways your legal work speaks for itself. But in terms of getting a foot in the door, I have found it best to be your authentic self, because you know, you want to be somewhere where you are going to be happy and comfortable. And if a company is hiring you under false pretenses, or they don't really know what they're getting, the same thing applies to you. You know, if you don't truly like the people you're working for, it's probably not going to be a great long-lasting fit. All right, so we're going to move on to a couple others because we have so many awesome questions. This is the most fun panel. Thank you very much. And audience, thank you very much for putting in your amazing thoughts. We have a question here. How have you been able to negotiate for what you're worth? As women, we don't do that enough. We don't do that enough. And to be honest, I have found that the only way to do it is to be very direct about it, which is uncomfortable in a lot of ways, but is effective. So yeah, I know. Kathy, go for it.
I was going to say, I joke actually with whoever it is that I'm negotiating with, that, hey, you're hiring me to be a strong negotiator for you. So let me show you what this looks like, and just be very confident. I think it really goes down to that. Know your worth. Know that what you're bringing to the company is going to be a lot, right? A lot of value, a lot of revenue. You're opening new doors for them. So, hey, they need to also respect and honor that.
That's right. And in a lot of cases, you are going to be the first or one of the first legal hires at your company. And they might not truly understand what you're there to do, what value you're going to bring. So be prepared to, like, I will make a list before I have a call. Be like, here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's what I'm going to do for the company that is going to make this enterprise scalable and more efficient and streamline things. Because a lot of times, people just don't necessarily know what the day-to-day of a first counsel or a second counsel or even a fifth counsel is in a company.
I also, like, not only do you negotiate up front, but like at least people expect the comp negotiation up front when you're coming in. Like for me, once you build the trust and you're in, having another comp conversation, like I think about it, and I like when you're a startup, like you don't even have a compensation process in place when you get there usually. So like you really do actually have to speak up. And like I remember cringing before I did it. Like I'm not that person. I don't like to bring things up like that. I just like to focus on my job and just do my job really well. And I had to do it. I had to do it with my title eventually. Because I was a head of legal, which is super typical. And I had been there a while, and I was like, my founders, they don't know that I want my title changed. And I had to bring it up, and it was a total non-issue. It was done. And the conversation was over, and I agonized for it for like weeks.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a conversation. So, you know, that was one. But yeah, I really stress, like for folks that are going to startups or in startups, the comp process, there is nothing like there is in a law firm. It's definitely not lockstep. It doesn't just automatically happen. You have to speak up, and you have to get sources. You have to get those surveys. Like there are a lot of free ones, a lot you have to pay, but there are plenty of free ones so that you can get an idea of really what you should be making. But it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. It was for me.
I agree. We still have some really amazing questions on Zoom, but I want to throw it over to our Clubhouse audience and see whether you folks have any questions that we can address. While Hannah and Sai are monitoring the chat over there, I'm going to kind of start our wrap up. We would absolutely love to connect with you offline to answer the questions that we don't get to here. So please feel free to reach out to any or all of us on Clubhouse, on LinkedIn. We would love to talk to you. Raad, I think I'm going to turn it over to you so I don't totally fumble the Lawtrades on Clubhouse and tell people to friend us or whatever. You know, you know the lingo. So we would love to connect with you there and have these ongoing conversations. And
guys, again, for this time, this was really amazing. Probably one of the best panels we've held to date. I will just say that if anybody wants to continue the dialogue, that you guys can sign up for our newsletter, which is how this little project kind of started. It's newsletter.lawtrades.com. Or if you're on the Clubhouse app, just go and follow the Lawtrades Club, be notified of future events. We'll definitely be doing more of these types of discussions in the near future. And we'll even take some of these questions that didn't get answered on Zoom and post them on the newsletter, and maybe have you guys kind of just type out an answer, and we can kind of make it into like a comment like thread just to sort of continue the dialogue. So yeah, so we'll leave it as that. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Brinda. Thank you, Meredith. You women are amazing, and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much again.